Good to have you with us. Joining us now, Congressman, 7th District, Republican Dave Brat. Dr. Brat, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, great to be on, John. Hope just heard the last little snippet, and I can anticipate the questions coming up.
All right. Well, I hope your wife, Laura, had a great Mother's Day. Let's start with
Jonathan, my boy's back from college, so the nest was all full. We had a great day.
So it was good to get all the chicks, right, back in the nest, and I know your wife was pleased about that. Now, I know we're short on time, so just tell me when you have to take off, and we'll manage it accordingly. Let's start with your town hall meeting, Chesterfield. A lot of people tried to shout you down. What was your take on the whole thing?
Yeah, well, it kind of summarized up. One of the journalists from the Chesterfield paper called me and said, were you upset with the crowd? Were you upset with the rudeness? And people booed God, and people booed the prayer. People booed the church. And I'm not talking people, 80% of the crowd identified as Hillary folks, and the news reporters all were in the room. They all saw national news, local news, everything. And I said, no, that's the constituents. They have a right to say whatever they want. I said, the only thing I'm upset about is that the press didn't report what happened in that room. And so I got a video out on my Facebook. People can go watch it. But when I brought up the idea that rights come from God, 70% of the room just wide open, upset, booing. I mean, it was incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. And I said, do you want higher taxes? The whole room said yes. I said, do you want a bigger federal government or smaller? They said, bigger. Do you want more regulation or less regulation from the federal government? We want more regulation. I mean, I went through everything, and it was just like up as down. So the people expressed their preferences very clearly, and the press would not cover it, and that tells you what's going on. And so the news guys at the local papers didn't print any of the stories, and then they called me to do a health piece today, and then the Richmond Times-Dispatch today, one of the reporters, I said, I'm happy to contribute to a piece on Medicaid, but I'll only do it if you print, a few paragraphs of content, because the one-line snippets are getting a little, boring here, and they're not conveying the fundamental information voters need to have. And she said, no, I can't do that. And she printed in the story today, front page news, that I wanted to have a few paragraphs. And I told her the whole rationale was because the last couple articles they wrote on me on healthcare, they did not print any content on pre-existing conditions, et cetera, which I went over for, 10 minutes in the town hall. And so that's crucial information. That's the issue of the day until Comey came along. And pre-existing was the issue. And I tried to cover that as, to give the best information I can for all the citizens out there, to let everyone know they're covered in about every way possible. And the press just isn't reporting on what's going on, what's making news. And so that's the frustration.
It's unbelievable, the level of media manipulation, Congressman Dave Brat, that's going on out there. I used to work at the Daytona Beach News Journal. I covered a congressman from the Jacksonville area that came down into our coverage, Corinne Brown. She was there for a very long time, 12 terms, I believe. Met with her in her office when I was with the Daytona Beach News Journal numerous times. Part of her district was in Volusia, northern Flagler County, which was part of our coverage. She got indicted on 20 counts or something of fraud. She's going to jail probably for a very long time. You couldn't find it because she's a Democrat. Right. You couldn't find it. I had to Google my old paper, the Daytona Beach News Journal, to find an article on it. Nobody covered it. It's unbelievable. All right, let's get to Comey. Did the president have a right to fire him because he said he didn't like the job that he was doing? Yes or no?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was a clear case, and Senator Schumer and the whole cast of characters on the Democrat side, I mean, it's kind of priceless right now hearing their reactions. They wanted him gone a few months ago, and he's a good man, right? I mean, he's got good integrity. He came out of Richmond. He's well-liked, but he got in the middle of the story, and he made a mistake, right? Back in with the Hillary emails, the tarmac, the Department of Justice, et cetera, and Comey was in the middle making legal determinations, which were, not part of his job. And so he put himself in that position in the middle of the politics. And you cannot do that. So the Democrats rightfully said no. The Republicans said no. Trump had a right to do it. And then, of course, you just played the clip from Schumer. That is key. And it has to do with the timing. So the Democrats saying this is the timing when this Russia investigation is going on. We got to make sure that an independent investigation gets to it. And that's the key word in the whole story, the it. We got to make sure they get to it. There is no it. That's the problem. There's no it. There's no information. There's no evidence of collusion with Trump. There's no story. Senator Warner was on the shows yesterday alluding to smoke, but he couldn't name any of it. He didn't name anything that points toward evidence where there's collusion between Trump and the Russians. And so, Senator Warner tries to come across as balanced and even-handed. He's not being even-handed. If you have evidence, name it. You don't get to say, wow, there's just a lot of smoke in the room. Well, really? What's the smoke look like? What room is it in? Right? And so that's the problem here. It's a lot of innuendo. We're a nation of laws, not of men. And so if you got evidence that someone has crossed the line on the law, let us know, and I'll be the first to jump on it, right? There's no partisanship when it comes to that. So name it, and we'll proceed as we should. But even the experts on the Sunday shows are saying the independent investigators are not the way to go. There's all sorts of problems with them in terms of timing. They got to start from scratch. They got to go off and start off whole new administrative offices from scratch, and so there's a tons of problems with it outside of that. But the major issue is this media investigation. They have produced no evidence yet, and that's their job.
No evidence, not one scintilla of it, not even a little itty bit, and yet they go forward. But here's my thing with the special prosecutor, which I've changed my position on. I was in favor of it, now I'm not, and I'll tell you why. Let the investigation in the U.S. Senate go forward. Mark Warner and Richard Burr, they said they're operating in a nonpartisan basis. They have all the subpoena power they need. They've already interviewed 25 or 30 witnesses. Let that proceed ahead. And so for the Democrats now, Congressman, to be saying, well, we're not going to confirm an FBI director until we have a special prosecutor, don't they have confidence in Mark Warner? That's my question. Don't they have confidence that Senator Warner with Richard Burr is going to get to the bottom of it or not? It's
that's exactly
hypocrisy.
Right. They want a special investigator so they can go off on a fishing expedition.
Right.
So on tangential issues, right? So if there's smoke, identify the smoke. If you can't identify the smoke, it's case closed and you got nothing, right? And you're right. That's it. Senator Warner's in charge. And so that's why we have a bipartisan setup. And so if there's anything there, they should get to it.
Yeah, either you have confidence in Mark Warner as a Democrat or not. And if you don't, right, then just say, look, we have no confidence in him, so we got to go with a special. But not to confirm a director of the FBI because there's not in this special prosecutor is ridiculous. That's just more threats and intimidation. And to be honest with you, they don't need it anyway, because they just need 50 Republicans. So the whole thing is stupid as far as I'm concerned, Congressman. Okay, where does Trump go from here, Congressman Brat?
Yeah, well, we just got to get some scores up on the board, and tax is the next biggie, right? So the Senate has to come up with some health care compromise with a House version so it can pass, in conference. And then regulatory is moving in the right direction. The stock market's up, but everything's waiting on the tax reform. And so he's got to put all energy forward on that tax reform, and we're going to join him in that effort. And if you get that through and you get the economy roaring again, a bunch of the fake news will subside into the background noise.
Right, because that's all that's going to matter. If the economy starts to grow at 3.5%, maybe 4 or 5%, it's going to be a whole new world. And then going into the midterms, he's going to be looking great, and so is everybody else. It's all about the economy. But I do agree that he's got to get this started. Do you have confidence that there's enough Republicans in the Senate to have the moxie to go forward with his plan?
Yeah, because we're going to do that in the 18 budget reconciliation instructions. So we just need 51. But you're right. It's going to be hard to get those, 5 or so very moderate to up and tough seats. But the whole country's hanging in the balance, right, on that. And even some Democrats would probably look at a reasonable tax package because the pressure in their districts, right? Every business person, small business, has just been getting hammered. And we need to give the small business person and big business, a chance to reignite the engines right now. And so it all hinges, right? There's immediate expensing is included on there, so you don't have to be depreciating stuff. That'll give an instantaneous pop to the economy, and then major reduction in the C Corp and S Corp, so the small business person can take that expensing funds and reinvest and then know they can hire new people. That's the biggest piece, right? Now with Obamacare hopefully going bye-bye, the hiring, the press never covered that. That is the major issue. Is I knock doors or whatever, every small business person will say, Obamacare is keeping me from hiring. I cannot hire any new people. It's too costly. It's too burdensome. And no one ever brings up that key point that small business can't hire because healthcare is too expensive.
So with that being said, and you know that the mainstream media is never going to cover this honestly. All they're going to do is cover the people who they claim have pre-existing conditions who are not going to be covered, who are going to get kicked out of the system and end up dying, right? That's all they're going to talk about. Congressman Dave Brat, if you look at your town hall meeting in Chesterfield and how that got stacked with Democrats and others trying to control the narrative, and as you said earlier, they were booing every time you mentioned God, and you can't get that out in the news. When that meeting ended, how did you feel about this whole thing? I mean, you go into your district, you have a town hall meeting, and you mention God and you get booed. I mean, what's going on here?
Well, yeah, that's what I explained. A couple other media, national media, called me up for reaction. They printed a few of the stories, and I said, look, this is not your grandfather's Democratic Party, right? That the Democrats, I used to work with the Randolph-Macon, the senior people, et cetera, used to be just classical liberals. And they would respect your right to differ. And what we saw in that room is not the standard Democrat Party. This is the hard left. They're very organized. They're trolling and blogging like crazy. And they want to disrupt all of politics they can. They have no positive agenda. They have no constructive agenda they can name. It's a tear down the opposition kind of move right now, and I don't think it's successful. The polls are going negative, and a lot of the Democrats walked out of the back of my town hall, by the way, so they couldn't deal with what they were seeing from their own side.
Really?
Yeah, and that's a problem. And so it wasn't just God. They booed the preacher. They booed while we're praying. They booed every major point. I was trying to find win-wins. They like shopping across state lines. And I said, well, good, there we got to win. And I said, we got to win because we both agree on that. They booed that. So, I mean, it was totally – and then the press didn't report any of that. And it is just shocking. And then I did major stories on pre-existing, no mention of the major issues of our day, right? So the readers out there, when you're hearing this out on the go look at your newspapers, right? And if they're not writing the major issues of the day, call them and say, hey, what's going on? Or write op-eds, say, why aren't you covering both sides just so we know the relevant information? We're not asking for bias here. We're just saying print the news. Whatever happens in that room, that was major league news right there.
So what was the objective of these Democrats who came to your town hall meeting, or the hard left, whatever you want to call them, where the preacher came on and he got booed? What was their objective here? Yeah,
well, I think it's still they basically would tell you, if you just talk to them one-on-one, they're upset that President Trump won. I didn't have any of these prior to the Trump victory.
Right.
And so they'll just tell you, look, they don't acknowledge him as president, so they're going to carry on as if he's not. So they're just going to yell and tear down any, public setting, public forum where you're discussing issues if you're not on their side. And that's the goal. It's just destructive right now.
All right, I've only got a minute. Vladimir Putin last night, condemning the North Koreans for another test missile launch. Apparently the test they had could reach Guam, where we have, as you know, B-1 B-52 bomber bases there. And Putin saying that, well, we shouldn't be proliferating nuclear arms on the Korean Peninsula, but then he defended Pyongyang and basically said they have a right to do what they want and they shouldn't be intimidated. I mean, now we've got Putin defending North Korea.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. I'm just watching it, and I'm trying to evaluate what their incentives are and how Korea fits into their objectives versus us. And so on the one hand, they're giving Russia a hard time, and on the other hand, they're giving us a hard time. So Russia's a little split. And so, but this is where incentives kick in, right? I mean, if no one wants to play right, I mean, we got all sorts of leverage, and President Trump knows that, right? There's trade leverage, economic policy stuff, banking, financial services. There's all sorts of ways the U.S. can exert its power without having to get militarily involved. But we're doing that as well, right? We've been meeting with the military leaders, and we're projecting force all over in a new way right now. But it's very unfortunate set of circumstances. We haven't dealt with this in 30 years, right? No administration prior to this has dealt with it, and now we're left in the ditch again, right? The economy's in the ditch. The healthcare system is in the ditch. The foreign policy is in the ditch. North Korea has nuclear weapons with long-range capacity, and it's a very serious time. And so it is what it is right now.
All right, we're out of time for this segment. I want to thank Congressman and Dr. Dave Brat for being with us, Republican 7th District, Virginia. That's the Central Virginia area. More information or to go to his Facebook page, you can link to everything. Go to davebrat.com, davebrat.com. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Thanks for holding your town hall meeting as strange as it was.
Yeah, right.
I'm glad you had it.
That's it. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
All right, sir. We got to take off.